You can always tell people who live for others by the anguished expressions on the faces of the others. You're just like, oh God, here she comes with her really good intentions. Like, I just feel like, please don't,
Yes.
And also it's a heavy mandate for something that should be the lightest thing in your life, which is how you express your own creativity. I love helping people. I think there are much more efficient ways for me to do it. Like, I give money to good organizations and I vote and I volunteer and I do all that kind of stuff. My art, though, is mine. And even the art that I make that ends up helping people, like, Eat, Pray, Love, for instance, people will say, thank you so much for your book. It really helped me. It changed me. I didn't sit down to write that book saying, it's high time I changed people's lives. I was such a hot mess at that point in my life. Like, I could barely tie my own shoes at that moment. Like, the last thing I had any business doing was being like, and now, people, let me give you the answers. That book was about me just looking for grace and looking for resurrection in my own life. And then accidentally, because I followed my own curiosity, trusted my creativity, made the work I wanted to make, I accidentally ended up helping people. That's a side effect that can happen in the end. And I have a quote in the book from this wonderful German theologian who said, all love eventually becomes help. All love eventually becomes help. So if you want to help, just love what you're doing, love who you're with, make sure that you love where you're living, whatever the thing is that you love, you'll start to sort of radiate this thing that people will want to be near. And it'll make them better. And that's the very kindest thing that you could possibly do for your community.
It is not Sunday, but we are preaching right now.
It's Sunday every day.
Amen into all of that. So I remember reading this particular part of Big Magic out loud, and I cheered and I laughed and I did my Jersey fist pump right all the way.
Jersey in the house, doubled up here today.
Seriously. And so when I read Shit Sandwiches and Day Jobs, okay, so I need to say this. I believe that those two, first of all, I think the book is required reading for every human, but those two in particular, you're so welcome, they're so vital for anyone trying to do anything, but especially if they have entrepreneurial aspirations.
Right.
They want to be a writer, they want to be a dancer, anything.
So start a business.
Yes. So if we could start with the fact, and I loved this because this is my mentality and how I was like, she gave words to it. I love it. That finding your true purpose is really about deciding which flavor of shit sandwich you're really in for.
Well, this I wish it were my idea. It's not my idea. I borrowed it, but I will lay it out here anyway.
Yes.
The idea is that every pursuit, no matter how glamorous it may seem, no matter how exciting it feels to you, no matter how much you feel like you were born to do it, comes with a shit sandwich. And so the question is not, what do I love? The question is, what do I love so much that I don't mind eating the shit sandwich that comes along with that thing? So for me in my life, writing is the thing that I love. And the shit sandwich was the 7 years that I was not getting published and that I was coming home from my job as a diner waitress, as a bartender, as an au pair, as somebody who worked in flea markets, as a cook. And I was coming home tired and smelling like other people's French fries and sitting down and doing my real job, which was to write. And then to go to the mailbox the next day and get another rejection letter. And then say, do I still want to do this? Because this shit sandwich sucks. Am
I ready to take another bite?
And I did still want to do it. And now even as somebody who makes their living as a writer, there's no end to the shit sandwiches. It's like, hello, horrible review in prominent newspaper. That's your shit sandwich today, Liz. You still want to do this work?
Yep.
Yeah, I still do. Still worth it. Like, hello, awful comment on social media from somebody who thinks you're a pile of dog shit, and just has like chosen every possible way that they cannot get it out of their system fast enough, how much disregard they have for your entire life.
Yep.
Still want to do this thing? Yeah, I still want to do it. So that's the question, because if the first time you encounter the shit sandwich, you're like, well, this isn't worth it, then that's not the thing you're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
And there are plenty of things in life that I have run into the shit sandwich and I've been like, so not worth it. So not worth it. Like, this is not, I don't want to do this. Like, whatever the alleged benefits of this thing might be. No.
Not down for this.
Soul Cycle. No. Like, I know it's probably really good for me, but I feel like throwing up right now because this is too hard.
I'm out.
You'll not be seeing me here again. And I love my sisters at SoulCycle. I just don't like feeling like I'm going to throw up when I exercise. So it's not for me, and so that's the question. So if you go into this thing thinking, if I follow my bliss and I live my dream and I stand in my truth, then everything will be great. It doesn't mean everything will be great. It just means at the end of the day, when you check in with yourself and you go, in the end, on the balance, is this still better than not doing it? And the answer is still, yeah, this thing is still better than not doing it, then you're on the right path.
I can't tell you how many people will think that, what we're shooting here, and there's lights, and I have a blowout, and, it's like, I don't do this every day. Like, so much work goes into what those little blips of, and the rest of the time, there's a lot of shit sandwiches on the table.
There's a lot of shit sandwiches.
There's a lot. They're lined up.
And
like
I had
Jersey subs.
Yes. I had a friend that I speak about in the book when I was in my 20s who was, I still believe, a far better writer than I was. Far better. And far more naturally talented than me. And just got so enraged that the same thing was happening to him as was happening to me, which was nothing. It's like you're doing this work and you're getting absolutely nothing out of it. And I just remember the day where he was like, I'm done. And my sense, honestly, that day was like, I was looking at his half-eaten shit sandwich and I was like, you gonna finish that, dude? Because I'll eat it. Because I'm like, I'll finish your happy. Like, to stay in this game, that's how much I love this.
Yes.
And so that's a really important fundamental question, and I think a really realistic one.
I think it's genius. And, the other portion about day jobs, this is something, so when I first started, I started a life coaching business when I was 23. I don't know what I was thinking, but I bartended and waited tables and taught fitness and did everything I could to not be desperate during the day so I could figure out my craft, so I could write content, so I could not be desperate as a life coach. Because what other more depressing thing in life is there?
You have to pay me. I'm your life coach and I'm losing my house.
So
it's not working.
Nothing's working. But
that doesn't instill confidence in your clients.
It's really not like living your best life. And so anyway, I loved this because I had day jobs for 7 years before my creative life could support me and sustain me financially. And frankly, I wasn't sure at the beginning it ever would.
Right.
I didn't know if that was going to happen.
Right.
And so I'd love to hear you talk about your take on this, because it's one of the things where people have these ideas. And there are unicorns that say, I'm going to do this and I'm burning the bridge behind me, and I honor those people.
Right.
But what I've seen over time is they're usually more the exception than the rule.
Right. Look, if that's how you have to do it,
yes.
If you can't feel like you're alive unless you're burning bridges behind you, light the match, walk away. That's your deal.
Yeah.
That's not the contract that I've ever had with my creativity, because for me, we live in this sort of bumper sticker world where the two bumper stickers that I always want to edit are the two with like a Sharpie in the parking lot. There's the one that says jump and the net will catch you. And there's the one that said, what would you do if you knew you could not fail, right? So the edits I want to make are jump and the net might catch you. And what would you do even if failure wasn't even like a word that you were caring about, which is a long edit and makes for a terrible bumper sticker. But what I'm getting at is I don't like the ethic that says if you try really hard and you put everything into it, you're going to get everything that you want. Because we're all grown-ups here, so can we just say that may or may not happen? You may or may not get everything that you want. You might put everything into something and it doesn't work. And that's okay if you didn't mortgage your house, risk your family, like empty out your IRA and just put yourself in a really precarious situation such that you can never do it again, right? That's the other thing, such that you've been so battered by how you set up your life so that now you're so cornered and strapped and anxious and shamed that you just say, well, if that's what it feels like to give 100% to something, you can keep it. I'm going to take nothing but safe choices from the rest of my life, and that's it, and you just shut down, right? I never want to see somebody put in that situation. So the contract that I made with writing when I was 15 years old, and I lit my candle and made my deal with the universe and said, I'm going to be a writer for the rest of my life. One of the promises that I made to the work was, I will never ask you to support me financially, I will support both of us. I am a resourceful person. My parents raised me to be a worker. I will do whatever I have to do to pay the rent, and you and I will have a love affair on the side of this that is not contingent upon monetization. And I've watched so many creative people murder their creativity by insisting that they are not truly creative unless their creativity pays the bills. And if it doesn't pay the bills, which it might or might not, or it might for a while and then it might not. You might go out of fashion, your thing might change, people might not want that anymore, and all of a sudden you're stuck. And I see those people go into depression, bitterness, rage, resentment. You have to be childlike in the pursuit of your life, but you cannot be childish. And this is a really big difference. Childlike means walking into the world with wide open wonder and being open and letting go of bitterness and ready to be amazed, ready to be taught, ready for everything to be new. That's childlike. Childish means I want it and I should have it. And I don't like the way this turned out. It's not fair. I'm going to have a temper tantrum now. Nothing ever goes my way. I didn't grow up in the right family. I don't have the right tools. I didn't get to go to the right school. Nobody likes me. I quit. And just because I want it, I should have it. That's childish.
Yeah.
So you have to separate those things out. I believe you can be childlike and mature at the same time. And mature means looking after yourself in the real world in a real way.
Yes. You know, I love this conversation because I feel like it's not had enough.
Yeah.
And there's so much like flag wave. You can do it.
Jump,
whatever.
Take the risk.
And I'm like, you know, I grew up in a very financially conservative. My parents didn't have a lot of money at all.
Yeah.
My mom could like take a dollar bill and, you know, stretch it for so long.
I would love to put your mom and my mom in a dollar bill stretching contest and just see what they could do with it.
But I am so thankful.
Me too.
So thankful for that because it's guided and inspired and informed so many smart choices that I've made that haven't necessarily been easy, but they've made all the difference over the long term. The creative paradox and making space for two mutually contradicting ideas that I love because I love the richness of paradox. This idea that if my creativity must be the most important thing to the world to me, and it also must not matter at all.
Oh, geez. Okay, once again,
Yes.
we're all grown-ups here.
Yes.
I do believe that it is humanly possible for the human mind to hold two completely opposing ideas as true at the same time.
I agree.
And this is why, for instance, I am capable of being a completely rational, scientific, empirical person who believes in evolution and global warming and reads the Science Times and thinks it's all fascinating. And at the same time, I can keep a place in my mind awake and alive to mystery, magic, and miracle. No problem.
Yes.
Like, I do not see this as a contradiction. I have a big mind. You have a big mind. We can do both of those things at the same time. Yes, you know, and so the paradox that you have to be able to hold on to comfortably if you're going to do any kind of creativity is exactly that. As you're approaching it, you have to approach it as though nothing matters more than this. And then sometimes minutes later, you have to be willing to throw it away and be like, it doesn't matter. You know, so like when I'm writing, that's what I'm moving back and forth between all the time is I'm sitting down like, this sentence has to be the most beautifully written sentence in the entire world. And it is spiritually and artistically lazy of me to bring anything less than that. And I'm like laboring over this sentence and I'm trying to bring, and I love it. And then I go back later and read the paragraph and realize that it actually doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, screw it. So like you love it and then you dismiss it. You love it and then you dismiss it. It is not, the thing is your work has, one of the big problems that I see, and I talk about this in Big Magic too, is when people refer to their work as their baby.
It ain't your baby.
It ain't your baby. It's not a human baby. It's not a human baby. There's a lot of differences between this book and human baby. Like for instance this, watch. Like, oh my God, you'd arrest me if I did that to a human baby. But I can totally do that. I can rip pages out of it. It's just a thing. It's just a thing I made. It's not a baby. And it's independent of me now.
Yes.
Because it's finished.
Yes.
So it doesn't need me.
Yes.
And people can attack it and they can criticize it. They can misunderstand it. They can steal parts of it. They can do all sorts of stuff that you wouldn't do to a human baby. And it will be fine and I will be fine. Yeah. Because there's a difference between me and this thing, right? So as much as I cared about it while I wrote it, now I have to kind of not care about it. And what I also have to recognize is, if anything, I have been its baby. Because everything that I am and everything that I have learned and everything that I have been and become in my life is because of the creative things that I made. In other words, they were making me, right? That's why you have to let your creativity out, is because it has you as a project. It's building you. It's creating you. So it's not the other way around. So like, don't get all precious about the thing you made. Get precious about it while you're making it, because that's the part where you can and should be precious. But once it's done, blah.
Boom.
Kick it to the curb and make another one, you know?
You're out.
It's like, you're old enough to drive, you know? You don't need me anymore. You know, like, just let it go.
Buy your own lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Under this roof, not, you know, like that's the sort of tone that I think is appropriate. But don't be like that as you're doing it. Because as you're doing it, love it, cherish it, and then forget about it.
Forget about it, the true Jersey style. So I want to leave on what I think was maybe the most valuable thing for me is your distinction between being a martyr and being a trickster as it relates to creativity, because I feel like I was schooled in the pain aspect of it. Even though I'm a pretty joyful, fun, playful person,
Right.
somehow if I sit down to write or create something new, it's like, oof, I got to suit up and this is going to be...
This is going to hurt.
This is going to hurt.
This is going to hurt. Okay, so I think there are two kinds of creators in the world. There are the martyrs and the tricksters. And most of us were schooled in martyrdom. You know, we come out of a pretty heavy Christian Germanic romantic tradition that says, by your suffering you shall be redeemed, really. And your scars are the badges of honor that show how seriously you take your life and how much you destroy yourself and everyone around you in the process of making something shows us how seriously you take your work. I reject it. I reject it. The other way is the trickster way. And so the martyr walks around saying, I will do this even if it kills me. And the trickster says, I didn't come here to suffer. You know, and the martyr says, by my wounds I shall be known. And the trickster says, pick a card, any card. The trickster's playing with this whole thing the entire time. You know, the martyr says, I'm going to end up on a broken heap. And that's how you'll know that I was serious. And the trickster says, I'm going to walk off with your girl. While you're doing that, the martyr is like Sir Thomas More. The trickster is Bugs Bunny, who's always looking how to sort of subvert and do things differently and do things more playfully and do things in a transgressive way, you know? And that, I feel like, is where the instinct for art originally came from, because art does that. It turns things upside down. It looks at things sideways. It plays with things. It desanctifies the holy thing. Yes. See, the martyrdom is all about this kind of sanctity that is so heavy that it will break you. And the tricksterdom is like, what if we don't have to treat this thing like it's a holy, sacred relic? What if I like put sparkles on it? What if I, you know?
What if I get out my bedazzler?
Right? What if I just get my glue gun and just, you know, like what if nothing's holy and everything's allowed? That's what art has been asking for centuries. Even holy, even sacred art has been asking. You know, even the Sistine Chapel has a bunch of little like winks from Michelangelo, like, what if the Pope's not infallible? What if I like give him donkey ears? What if I, you know, like there's always like this sort of playfulness that art wants to do. And all we want to do is take it so seriously that we kill it and often ourselves in the process. And so if you can learn how to dance with the trickster part of yourself, which is in you, because we all have martyr in us and we all have trickster in us, and trust, that's the thing about the trickster. The trickster trusts the universe, trusts that if the trickster takes a ball, throws it into the universe, the trickster knows it's coming back. It might come back 3 years from now. It might come back in a hailstorm of like 20 balls. It might come back like in some really comic, strange way. But if you engage, there'll be a response. And the only thing the trickster wants to spend its life doing is playing with that sense of like, put it out there, see what happens. Put it out there, see what happens. And it's just a more fun way to live that isn't quite so heavy and isn't quite so macho. Mm-hmm. And that's the way that I've always wanted to engage with my work. And whenever I catch myself being the martyr, I'm like, are you falling for this?
Yeah.
Are you falling for this thing that says the only way that you can be creative is to suffer? Because you know better, right? And then we trick our way out of it.
Yeah. Hello, Marie. I see that with your busy life, you also make time to read a lot of books, a great habit I want to emulate. However, in this ADD-driven online world, it is hard to strike a balance of finding inspiration and making time to actually do the work. It seems like all I want to do is absorb more and more information, and my hunger for knowledge never seems to be quenched. After all, it was this ADD which drove me to your YouTube channel. And I'm grateful for that. My question is, how do you strike the balance and continue to find inspiration every day while not getting lost in it? Ooh, Rashika, this is a hot question, something we can all relate to. Our world, especially the online world, is like a big rabbit hole of inspiration, and it's really easy to get sucked down into it. It reminds me of my old clubbing days. People used to get sucked into K-holes, except in this case, it's an eye hole, and people get paralyzed with possibilities. I'm so inspired right now, but I can't feel my legs. And I'm so cold. To use another metaphor, finding inspiration online can be a bit like the Roach Motel.
Roaches check in, but they don't check out.
Wait, hold up a second. Can we see that again? Who did not fix that brother's eyebrow? It's all crazy sticking up there. Back to the inspiration Roach Motel. Inspiration is awesome, but as you know, too much of it can be counterproductive. So here's the secret to finding inspiration every day without getting lost in it. It all lies in your C to C ratio. How much are you creating versus how much are you consuming? Because at any given point during your workday, you're doing one or the other. So you are either creating that program, writing that blog post, editing that video, drafting that sales page, or you are consuming other people's ideas. Now, the game plan here is to always do a lot more creating versus consuming, and there are two ways to do it. Number one, create before you consume. This is all about sequence. Do not pick up the inspiration crack pipe and get high on possibilities until you've sat your ass down and done your work for the day. Then, and only then, can you have some crack. Yay, crack!
Marie TV does not actually endorse smoking crack.
Remember this, and yes, it's a tweetable. Don't confuse getting inspired with getting things done. Create before you consume. Number two, stack your crack. Inspiration crack, that is. Having a little crack here and a little crack there. Here's some crack, there's some crack, everywhere some crack. That's what's turning you into a junkie. And here's what you need to do instead. You need to make a stack of all the things that you want to read or be inspired by or listen to, so that this way you can get your inspiration high on during your non-peak productive hours, anytime you wouldn't or couldn't be creating something anyway. Maybe when you're riding the subway or waiting in line or even before bed. Stacks are great because anytime you come across something that's really tempting that would normally put you into an eye hole, you can add it to your stack of crack and have at it when you're good and ready. Now, Rashika, before we wrap up, I just want to acknowledge you because you said, my hunger for knowledge never seems to be quenched. That is awesome. Don't lose it. Learners are earners. So keep going, girl, but just keep in mind your C to C ratio.
Let's talk about turning pro. I can't tell you how many times I've been on stage. I've had War of Art with me, and I've read the difference between like an amateur and a pro, and I've just read it down. It's like, you guys got to go this. So for those who don't know, what does turning pro mean?
Well, if you start with the idea of resistance and that there is such a thing, then the next question is how do you defeat it? And I think there's two paths that we go down that are wrong paths, or paths that don't help us. One is we think that if we're feeling resistance, we're wrong, quote unquote wrong. So we need to become right. We need to change something that way. And I don't think that's true at all. The other thing when we think of we have resistance is we think, oh, we're sick, right? Or we need to heal. We need to somehow find the cure and then we'll get over it. And I don't think either of those ways work of thinking because they're self-judgmental. They put you down. It's like in training, in the gym.
Yeah.
If you have a bad day, you can't say to yourself, I'm a loser, I'm a bum, I'm not an athlete. You just have to say, well, that was a bad day and I'm going to, go at it the next way. But anyway, the concept of turning pro, or the idea that there's such a thing as an amateur and there's such a thing as a professional, and that amateurs have amateur habits and professionals have professional habits, and that why people get defeated by resistance, in my opinion, is they're thinking like amateurs. I certainly know that's the way I was.
Yes.
And if you're an amateur, you're in it kind of for fun. You're sort of a dabbler. You think, oh, well, today I'll do it, right? You're a weekend warrior. When adversity comes, you fold in the face of adversity. If there's anything in your life that is a serious problem, you'll let that take over your whole life. It's sort of, if we think of it in terms of athletes, it's like an athlete that's injured.
Yep.
If LeBron James has got problems with his knee, he somehow plays hurt,
Yep.
So the professional attitude is a whole other different thing. I mean, you're a pro. Look at you. Look at this thing here. And a pro gets up every morning and does the work, doesn't take days off, or if they do, they only take them off because so they can come back
Refreshed.
stronger the next time.
That's right.
And when a pro hits adversity, they just simply rally in the face of it and kind of use it in their own way. If a pro is hurt, they play hurt, and it's a whole different mindset.
Yes.
And so to me, that was sort of what really helped me overcome resistance. It was just to start to flip that switch in my mind and say, I'm a pro.
Yes.
I'm not an amateur, I'm a pro. And when I want to quit or I want to, back off something, I just say to myself, would Kobe Bryant do this? Would Tom Brady do this? I'm sorry, all you people who hate the Patriots. I do too. But in any event, I do think to think of yourself as a professional instead of an amateur is a big, big plus.
It's huge. And I love you talk about it. A really easy way to see this is how we show up in our day jobs, right? If we have day jobs.
Yeah, right.
It's like you just show up and you do the work no matter what. And I think about it this way. We have a program that's called B School. I think I've told you about it before. And we've had 44,000 people so far go through it. And I often answer questions and they'll be like, okay, what's happening with your business? And I try and help them navigate best I can, just give a little perspective. And then I'm like, how often are you publishing your newsletter? Well, I publish it like once or twice and then I get bored or then I forget and then I come back and I'm like, it's consistency. And I wanted to bring this up because I feel like that notion of you show up no matter what is it's actually all of how everything I've created gets done. Like,
I'm sure that's true. That's how everything gets done, right?
It's how everything gets done.
Yeah.
It's like you don't necessarily always feel like it, but you show up and you get it.
Yeah.
You make it happen.
Yeah.
And I love that notion because it's meant the world to me, how you explain the difference between an amateur and a pro. And I just want to make some clarifications because, again, I can hear, I've developed this gift over time of hearing the audience, but what about this? What we're saying in terms of being a professional, it's like we don't want you to hurt yourself. When Steve was saying play injured, it's not about putting yourself out. There's an essence, I think, in each of us where you take a look and you go, I got this. I can do this. This might be hard. There's been times in our business where it's required us doing a shoot over the weekend. Or you know what? Everything goes to hell. Technology breaks. We're shooting here and there's helicopters and we all have to stay a couple more hours. It's like no one's whining or crying and going, I can't. They just do it. And like that's, I think, part of that spirit.
And like you're saying, Marie, you might have said it so fluidly that it went over people's heads. When we work in a real job, we're already pros in that job.
Yes. We
do show up. We know the reason we're pros is the job enforces it on it, right? They'll fire us. They'll, if we don't show up every day, but then when people leave that job and go off on their own to try to be a writer or an artist of some kind, they tend to drop that whole attitude and they think, well, I don't have to do it. It's Monday. I don't have to go in because I'm not, but
Yes.
you do have to go in.
Yes.
And that's really the secret, if there is such a thing.
I think, too, there's another aspect that you've written about. Self-validation is another quality of a professional. And you said that's a big word, and maybe it's hard to understand. But it's about somewhere finding the ability to judge your own stuff.
Now, how do you do that, Marie? Let me ask you that.
Oh, gosh, it is hard as hell. So I have a couple of different ways that I do it. There are times when I feel like it depends on the project and the context, but if I'm writing, let's say, an episode of Marie TV, I'll often do like a couple of first drafts on my own. If it's not an interview, if it's like something straight to camera, and I'm either answering a question or there's a topic I want to riff on, and I know, because you probably know this, a lot of my stuff, there's like skits and sketches because I have this weird sense of humor and I build in all these things. And so I'll do a couple of passes on my own, and then I have to ping out to someone else. Like I have to either have a member of Team Forleo or someone else go, okay, can we go through this together? Because I think, 60 or 70% of this is working, but I know I'm missing the mark, but I don't know if I can see, you know what I mean, how to thread that
That's why
needle.
I wanted to ask you, because in a way, you're the product.
Yeah.
So it's very hard, I would think, to look at yourself
Objectively.
and objectively and pull back from it. I mean,
Yes.
how do you do it just by having other people give you feedback?
I do. And then I think what I've been able to do over the years is surround myself with folks that I really trust, so that if we need to, I call them creative like boxing matches. I get into them with, my creative director. I'll get into them with people on the team where I'm like, okay, I really believe in this. And they have eyes on different lenses of the business. Like, let's just use a current one. Like, is that even appropriate? Because things in culture change so fast. I would never want to hurt anyone unintentionally. I don't want things to get taken off topic and like go into this strange place that's nothing I intended. So sometimes we'll do battle, but I trust them and they trust me, and I feel like we can go to the mat. But ultimately, it's my call. When it comes to now book writing, I'm curious to hear your process on it. I feel like there's certain parts for me, and I would love to hear how you work with Sean or anyone else. There's been parts in this book I'm like, I don't know if it's any good.
Yeah.
It's all shit.
Yeah,
I feel like I took my stack, threw it up in the air, and like, can someone help me figure it out?
Yeah. Well, my partner, Sean Coyne, who was my original editor on Gates of Fire and also was the publisher of The War of Art.
Yes.
I'm so lucky that I have somebody that I really trust and that I can give him a pile of pages and he'll give me, feedback that I believe,
Yes.
And
that's a key piece. I don't want to interrupt you, but for everyone listening, two things I heard from both of us. People we trust.
yeah,
Someone we trust their feedback, because
and they're hard to find.
They're very hard to find because that other person may be smart, intelligent, talented, but if there's not like a soul alignment, I feel, or like a philosophical
Or somebody that just gets you or gets what you're trying to do.
Yes. Their feedback can kind of send you.
Yeah.
It's happened to me before where it's like I get in a creative cul-de-sac over here and I'm like, wait, this is so far away from who I am.
Yeah. I want to say one thing about writers groups where people give you feedback.
Yes.
I'm like completely opposed to that. I think that can be the most destructive thing because you're getting feedback from other people who don't know what they're doing either.
It's like the blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
No.
And also the whole concept of jealousy and all that kind of stuff that goes. So to me, it's really important to find somebody that you really trust. But beyond that, like you were saying, Marie, it's self-validation.
Yeah.
In the end, the bottom line, being a professional, I think, and going away from being an amateur is like also going from working in a job to being an entrepreneur, to being completely on your own.
Yes.
And when you're in a job or you're in a situation, where you have a mentor or a boss or something, you look to that external voice to tell you, oh, that's good, you did it right? We've all had jobs where we take something into a boss and they look at it and then they mark it up and they give it back to you, and as you walk into the boss, you're completely giving away your power. That may be a good thing when you're young and you're learning, but at some point you do have to sort of acquire the ability or teach yourself to read your own stuff and know whether it's good enough or not, and I don't know if there's any way to do that other than experience.
Yeah.
And even then, you still need a great eye from somebody else. But self-validation is very important, not looking to other people because they always tell you it stinks,
Yeah.
And if you listen to them, then it's over.
It is over. And it would have been over for your latest project, right? Because you have a lot of people who you love.
Definitely.
I want to talk just for a minute, one more thing on going pro before we get into some tactics. I loved you talk about how your day changes when you turn pro. And I think that that's so practical for us because one of the things that folks struggle with, especially when they're going out on a creative project or becoming a freelancer or trying to become an entrepreneur or a business owner, is like, whoa, if I don't have to show up for a job, I got all this free time.
Yeah.
So, you wrote, it changes what time we go to bed and what time we get up. It changes how we organize our day. It changes what we read and what we feed our bodies. The amateur tweets, the pro works. And I was like, Steve Pressfield just took me to church on that one.
But that certainly is true.
Yes.
Because again, when we were working in a factory, our day was structured for us by the factory, right? You got to show up at 7:25 when the whistle, and you can have lunch from 11:30 to bump, bump. But as soon as we're on our own as artists, then we have to structure our day. And well, the reason I'm sure that you go to the gym is because you found that helps in some way.
Yeah.
And
I find my physical body is a huge creative channel. And when I disconnect and spend too much time up here, I'm done.
yeah, me too. What
Totally
you
done.
eat, how
Yes.
much sleep you get,
Yes.
all those things. There's I think it's in The War of Art. It might be in Turning Pro,
I have all of them.
where I talk about Roseanne Cash's moment that comes from her book Composed. And if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. But she had her sort of moment. She was already successful. She had a dream. I won't go into the dream because it's, we'll save time. But the bottom line is, when she woke up from this dream, the dream sort of kicked her in the ass and just said to her, you are an amateur. You are a dilettante. I don't care if you've had 4 #1 hits. You're not writing songs. You're just covering other people's material. You're not living up to what your talent is. And she said in the book, Composed, she said, I changed everything about the way I was. I changed what time I got up in the morning. I changed how I took care of my body. I started going to studying painting because I wanted to see how you express yourself without words and without music. And then she locked on to certain habits that she had, bad habits like daydreaming, like going off, and she would sort of teach herself to check herself and stop herself when she started doing that thing. And then she elevated her level of aspiration. She said, the next album, I'm going to write either every song or co-write every song. So that's sort of how she restructured her day, not just her day,
Yeah.
but her week, her month, her year, her whole life.
Yeah.
And that's another sort of way of saying she turned pro,
Absolutely.
even though she was already a success,
Yes.
but not to the level that she wanted to be.
I think that's such a great distinction, because one of the kind of dangerous areas we have to watch out for, I believe, especially when we start to get, whether it's some recognition or financial success or whatever that looks like for you, is this idea like, oh, I can kind of sit back. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like I've figured this out, or I can just keep it going. But it gets stale real fast. And I love what you said about there was this voice inside of her that said, no, there's more for you. There's another level. She elevated her ambition for who she could be.
Yeah.
And listen to that. And I
And
think
she
that's,
certainly has taken it there in the
Yes.
years since.
yeah.
Hey there, if you want even more strategies to learn how to write with impact, be creative, sound like yourself, make more money, and actually enjoy doing it, then you have to get yourself into the Copy Cure. It's my flagship writing program. The doors just opened, but only for a limited time. So head to getthecopycure.com to get started. And with that, let's get back to it.
Dear Marie, I want to tell you how much you've inspired me. Thank you. I'm working out every morning in an attempt to change my whole outlook on the day. I call it the perfect positive storm. That's very cute. Because I watch your videos on my tablet while I walk on the treadmill. Smart idea. Here's my situation. I'm frustrated with work. My husband and I have a small shop on Etsy, and I'm also a freelance writer for several farming magazines. My confusion comes in that every time I pour my heart and soul into a piece, be it an article or a new item for our shop, I feel like it gets ignored or just gets a meh response. On the other hand, some of our work that I'm less proud of gets gobbled up and gets rave reviews. I'm happy that I'm slowly getting discovered, but it's rarely for the things I'm most proud of. Do I just have terrible taste? Am I missing cues from customers and editors who are telling me what they want via some mystic language that I don't speak? And how do I translate that and still be genuine? On another note, I'm about 3/4 of the way through writing a novel, something I've never poured more of myself into ever! Exclamation point. I'm really nervous that the novel will get the same meh response, and I see this fear holding me back from finishing the darn thing. Any insight would be great. Thanks so much for all you do, Jennifer.
Jen, this is an awesome question and something that I think artists have faced since the beginning of time. Sometimes what we feel is our best work doesn't appeal to the masses or even to anyone. I mean, here on Marie TV, there are episodes that I think are so funny, ha ha ha, and then we put them out there and it's like crickets. I mean, they hardly get any shares and people don't really respond. And then there's other stuff that I'm like, not my best work, and people freaking share like crazy. You can't really figure it out.
The first thing I want to talk about is what I like to call the Saturday Night Live factor. I love Saturday Night Live. It's been on since 1975. They've shot over 751 episodes, and it's one of the longest running shows in TV history. Now, sometimes people like to talk smack about it, and they say, you know what, it's not that funny anymore. There's only one funny sketch per episode. But I see it really differently. You know, if you want to create great work that gets recognized out in the world, you have to create a lot of work. You have to do it consistently, and you've got to be willing for some of it to be meh. In fact, the only way that you can ever strike creative gold like this is if you are willing to create some meh stuff along the way. The same thing is true for musicians and movie directors and writers. Your job as an artist is to stay true to yourself and just keep creating. And just realize that some of it is going to be a hit, which is awesome, and some of it is going to be meh. Now, the second side of the story is recognizing that if art is your business, meaning you got to earn a living off this stuff, then you have to learn to listen to what your customers want. This doesn't make you a sellout, it makes you smart. Now, if I were you, Jen, I would really start to look for the patterns in what's selling and what's not. Then, of course, you can have conversations with your buyers, with your editors, and find out what are they responding to with the stuff that's really selling, that's a hit, and what are they not loving so much about your other work. Now, they may not be able to articulate it clearly, but I promise you, if you keep an open mind and an open heart, you're going to learn a ton. That's not only going to inform you as an artist, but it's also going to make you a better business person. Remember that art is about connecting to your audience. It's a dialogue, not a monologue. Now, the things that you want to make aren't always going to be the things that people want to buy. That doesn't mean they have bad taste or you have bad taste. It just means you have unique taste. And finally, when you got to earn a living, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. I mean, we've all seen really smart actors who are known for incredibly brilliant little indie films do these huge blockbusters where they're like fighting cobras in space, so they have enough money to fund the passion projects. And we've also seen people do perfume ads. I mean, do you think this was Brad's most proud moment?
My luck, my fate, my fortune. Chanel number 5.
And you know what, Jen? I am not ashamed to show you this. Ain't no shame in making a buck, Jen. So let's land this plane on a tweetable. Ignoring what sells doesn't make you a better artist, it makes you a starving artist. Hey Marie, thank you so much for all that you give to us constantly. I watch every Tuesday. Thank you. And one question I have is, how do you always come up with all this great content? Do you ever have days when you just feel uninspired or like you don't have anything new to say? And if so, how do you still give us constantly great episodes of Marie TV? I send my people a weekly newsletter too, but I'm afraid of uninspiring days or future days where I won't have much to say or will have covered all the topics that I can think of. Do you have any tips for how you keep your well from running dry? Love, Chelsea. Chelsea, I was so excited to see this question for a lot of reasons. First of all, I think everybody can relate to this. I certainly can. I think anyone who creates anything fears the well running dry. We've all had that oh crap moment. I'm totally done. I have nothing else to say. Everything's been done already. And everything I create from this moment forward, of course, is going to be crap. Now, if you've ever felt this way, whether you're an artist or another type of creative, or you're a business owner like me who has to create content week after week, this is the episode for you. So I'm going to answer this question in the framework of what I do, which is creating content for this show, my weekly newsletter, my blog, all that online jazz. And all that jazz. Ooh, sorry. That's what happens every time I say jazz. Now, the first thing I want to say is that I am not some creative superhero. Despite these tights. Notice I haven't taught you anything yet. That's because tip number 1, or shall we say tip number dumb, is do dumb shit. I mean, I just did like 5 dumb things, and as far as I'm concerned, the dumber, the better. Giving yourself permission to be dumb is actually a really smart way to activate your creativity. I say find a dumb buddy and get stupid together. Here's my dumb buddy. She's the dumbest bitch I know. In fact, she made me say that, and she's making me sing this song right now.
Dumb buddy, dumb buddy, dumb buddy, dumb buddy. Wherever I go, she goes. Dumb buddy, dumb buddy, dumb buddy, dumb buddy. I'll teach her everything that I know. Dumb buddy and me, la 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 la. Dumb buddy and me, we're the best friends it could be. Dumb buddy, dumb buddy, dumb buddy, dumb buddy. Dumb buddy and me.
Belgrade Dumb Buddy, not for sale in stores. Get your own damn Dumb Buddy.
How dumb was that? Now, I'm not necessarily saying you should be silly in your content if that's not true to your brand, but being silly while you're creating, now that can really open up some new ideas. Tip number 2, the magazine rule. Retreading old ground is not a sin. Now, when it comes to content creation, you got to remember, A, not everybody saw that blog post you did back in 2011. B, if they did, they probably don't remember it as well as you do. And C, people like to revisit the same topics again and again. Now, I've been doing Marie TV for years now. Now, Q&A Tuesdays, we revisit the same themes all the time. You'll also see this in the magazine world. Now, I've been a subscriber to O Magazine for years, and I love it. But check this out. Declutter Your Life appears on 3 covers. I don't get mad at O Magazine because I'm happy to read that again. I always need to declutter something in my life. And you know what? You see repetition in every facet of the art world. I mean, Georgia O'Keeffe painted those vajayjay flowers over and over, and sitcoms use the same basic storylines, and Taylor Swift is always singing about breakups, and rappers are always rapping about the party, and then the after party, and then the party after the after party, and then the hotel lobby. Tip number 3, and this is my biggest tip of all. It's a mantra I use for a bunch of things like money and love and ideas. And yes, it's today's tweetable. When it comes to creativity, there's always more where that came from. Now, if you're more spiritual, let me remind you of one of my favorite quotes from my friend Marianne Williamson. God's the water and you are the faucet. This is awesome, so you don't get it twisted and think that all of your brilliant ideas are coming from you. It requires a little bit of creative surrender and to get your ego out of the way so a higher power can come down and work through you. What keeps you motivated and so enthusiastic about your business? I'm just starting my own, and it's a struggle to keep myself in the right frame of mind 24/7. Very popular question. We're gonna press pause on that, and I'm gonna go to question number 2. This one's from Lydia, and Lydia writes, I'm a certified virtual assistant and I really want to make progress with my business this up and coming year. It's like I'm starting up all the time, but never really launching it, as if something is stopping me. Interesting. What steps do you recommend in order to break down that mental barrier? I know it's something that worries a lot of people like me, changing from a daytime job in order to become an entrepreneur. I know I can and will do it, but there's always a but. I think these questions are amazing because what both these young ladies are talking about is something all of us deal with, and it's called resistance. I want to introduce you to one of my favorite books on the planet. Now, if you've been listening to me for a little while, you probably have heard this before, but it bears repeating. The War of Art by a guy named Steven Pressfield. I have been reading this book over and over and over and over again for years. I have like my little stickies in there. It's really worn. It's even turning yellow. This book's incredible, but wait, there's more, because guess what? Steven just came out with a brand new book, and it's called Do the Work. This is actually the cover, but Do the Work is on the back. I devoured this book in such a hot minute. Why? Because it talks about the answer to your cues. Every one of us deals with resistance. It's that thing that happens, all those thoughts that come up in our mind anytime we want to start something creative. I mean, whether you want to begin your own business, you want to lose some weight, you want to run a marathon, you want to create a piece of art, all of us have that same head junk that comes up that can stop us dead in our tracks if we don't know how to deal with resistance. And this thing, my friends, is the Bible. But hang on, because this is where it gets even cooler. I have admired Steven Pressfield for so freaking long, I can't tell you. He's been like one of my creative idols, and we are so lucky right now because we are gonna interview him and he's gonna tell us about resistance and how to deal with it. Here we go. Okay, so we are here right now with one of my favorite authors of all time, Steven Pressfield. He has made such a huge difference in my life. Steven, thank you for taking the time today to chat with us.
Thanks, Marie. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so I kind of set up, there's another piece of this video that's all beautifully produced, and basically I have a lot of people that write me in and ask like, oh God, I have these ideas, but I feel like something's stopping me, and you've written so eloquently about how to handle resistance in this gem of a book that we'll let them read it, because everyone needs to have a copy of this. So we'll let you talk about resistance in the book, but I want to ask you some personal questions because you're one of my idols, so this is awesome. Do you have a lot of books and ideas for screenplays and maybe even more books come to you simultaneously, and then you have to, do you ever struggle with which one to start working on first?
I do, but although more often I don't have enough ideas. I'm really happy if I just have one that's in the future, and a lot of times I'll be working on a book for 2 years, and I have no clue what's going to come next, if anything ever will. I'm praying that it will. I mean, at the moment, I actually have 2 or 3 backed up. But my mantra, as I know you know from reading War of Art, is when you have more than one idea, take the one that scares you the most. That's the one that you should do.
I love that. I actually, again, I've read War of Art and I have it all earmarked and stuff, but just hearing you say that again reminds me, because that was actually my next question was how, if you do have multiple ideas, what's your methodology for choosing which one to go with? And so has that kind of guided your career when it comes to creativity?
Definitely, because I think, there's sort of a law of resistance in my experience that the more important a project is to your soul's evolution, the more resistance you'll feel to it. So, if it's not important to you, you won't feel any resistance at all.
Right.
But if it's something that's like really life-changing and you have to do it, you'll feel, or at least I will, massive terror, resistance, self-doubt, all of those things, right?
Yeah.
So I always say it's kind of like a needles, that always will point true north. Resistance will always point to what you should be doing. Whatever you're most afraid of is the one to do. That's been my experience. And I also say in the War of Art, remember that show on Bravo, Inside the Actors Studio with James Lipton?
Yes.
But I always ask actors, how do you know which role you want to take? And they almost always answer the role that was going to stretch me the most. Because, if they've already done it, if they've done other role, why repeat yourself? If you've been an action hero in one movie, why do it again? You've already done it, right? Why not try to be a sensitive, neurasthenic artist or something like that?
It's true. And I think for me, in my own experience, like as you're talking, my mind was calling up. Yeah, my biggest breakthroughs in my business have been when I've been willing to step into that place like, oh my God, this makes me want to throw up, but I have to do it. It's those are the projects that are
always
usually...
a good sign. Throwing it up is always a good sign.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because for me, my body reacts like it reacts very physically, where like if I'm really pursuing something, I can start calling up headaches, I can call up all kinds of things that it's almost like giving birth to this. All these toxins have to come out. Yeah. So another question, do you give yourself shipping deadlines? Like if you're working on this book, are you like, what, I'm going to give myself 3 months to get X done, or do you just kind of give yourself creative license at this time to give it as long as it takes?
I mean, it may be different for me, Marie, because writing novels takes so long. It could be 2 years, it could be 3 years, and a lot of times other projects will come along. Maybe, you'll get a different job to do a screenplay or something
Right.
that, you could do in 3 months or something. And so I don't impose deadlines, except with short projects.
Right.
Then I do. I say, I want to get this done by Christmas, or I want to get this done, I'll have a vacation slated. I'm going to get this done. I don't want to think about it, when I get out of here. But for long projects, I think they have a life of their own, and you have to respect and not put too much pressure on yourself. At least that's my feeling.
Yeah.
So I try to cut myself some slack in areas like that.
Awesome. I think I only have, so this is the question actually that I was so excited to ask you, and it comes from page 95 in Do the Work, which again, everybody on the planet I feel like has to have a copy of Do the Work. So you wrote this at the end, and it says, the level of maturity, professionalism, and personal involvement demanded by the tectonic overthrows happening today in positioning, branding, and marketing, not to mention pure art and soul authenticity. And then you kind of alluded to, but this is a whole nother topic for a whole nother book. And while it very well may be on your plate, I was so fascinated because I feel the same way inside. So if you have anything to say about that topic or what you wrote there, I'd love to hear it.
That we're sort of living in ADD times, aren't we? With so many distractions and so many temptations, so many ways that it looks like you can make a fast buck or make a fast killing or make a fast creative killing or that it really does take a tremendous level of maturity and self-discipline, motivation, self-validation to sort of keep in your own world, keep focusing on what's important to you and guiding yourself by your own star rather than getting pulled off. It's like there are so many, to use kind of a space analogy, it's like there are so many planets out there zigging and zagging in front of us, each with their own gravitational field to pull us this way or pull us that way. It's really a challenge to just follow your own gyroscope.
Right.
And very hard to do, because a lot of times, and I'm sure you get this a lot, is success or attention will come to you for something that maybe it's not your best stuff.
Right.
Or maybe it's not pulling you in the direction that you really should be going. And it can be hard to sort of follow your muse and follow your highest kind of long range calling, where you're going to be over a career. I don't know if that answers, if Marie, if you have any more specific areas. It's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, no, and I also, first of all, that was a beautiful answer, and I agree 100%. It's actually, I think it's shifting also the way that when it comes to books at least, in the past couple years, I've had one book under my belt, and it's about 168 pages, and I'm super proud of it. And I'm thinking like the next book's in me, and it's starting to, bubble up, and I want it to be short, it's like I love, one of the things I love about Do the Work is I read this puppy in a couple of hours. I mean, I did not stop, just went right through, and I felt like I got such a full meal without having, like 300 pages in front of me. So I think the way that we're consuming creativity, like you said, our attention spans are getting shorter. So it's an interesting time for us as creators and also as consumers to think about how we want to say what we have to say.
Yeah, my first was a guy named Bart Holt. This was years ago. He was like 88 years old at the time. And I was asking him, how long should this book be? I'm working on a book. How long should it be? And he said, how long is a letter? And what he meant by that is there can be short letters and there can be long letters.
Right.
And each project will sort of dictate the length that it wants to be. So if you're kind of feeling that this wants to be short, the next thing, then it should be short.
Right.
It could be read on your iPhone, it could be read on an iPad, it can be read, in an airport lounge. You rip through it while you're like that. I mean, I don't think a novel could be like that, but the kind of book that's sort of an inspirational book or a kick in the ass book.
Yeah.
or a sort of it's longer than, say, a long Vanity Fair article, but it's shorter than a book. So that you really, like you say, you feel like you get a full meal, you get a real steak and potatoes meal, but you're not doing it for like reading War and Peace, right? So.
Yeah, no, I like it. I love it. And I have to just thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us for a little bit. And
thank you for having me. It's, your book about how to, how to attract any man or make, what is the title of the book?
So
how to make men.
Yeah, you'll like this.
About,
So it's called, the title is Make Every Man Want You, How to Be So Irresistible You'll Barely Keep From Dating Yourself. And
that's great. I love it.
It's a Trojan horse. It's actually not that much about men or dating. It's a very spiritual book about my take on the access point for me of irresistibility is being very present in the moment and kind of letting go all of the crap that goes on up here and fully engaging with your life, like no brakes on, just going for it. And so I actually got a little Facebook comment today from a woman who said, I was so angry at your title. I thought it was bullshit. I thought it was crap. It's so superficial. And she said that I read it and it totally changed my life. So I kind of like to do things
that's a great.
Yeah,
well, I like to tell you practice what you preach.
Yeah, I mean, I for whatever reason, I like to create in what I call Trojan horses, where it sounds like it's one thing and it's probably a little controversial or it's a little something, and then it gives you something else once you get on the inside. I just think it's fun to surprise people that way. And plus it's, if I would have wrote a book like, here's how to live in the present moment, I mean, I don't think I would have done very well, frankly.
Right. A great title helps a lot.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll enjoy the rest of your afternoon in LA, and thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for creating this incredible, incredible guide for all of us who want to make stuff in the world. And for everybody watching, you guys, I can't recommend this enough. You have to get a copy of this book. And I don't know, Stephen, if the gang told you, but we have a bulk order coming because I want, I have a high level group of women that I mentor in a program called the Rich, Happy, and Hot Adventure Mastermind. And I need them to have this. This needs to travel with them all the time.
Great.
So I'm psyched.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm just starting to hone my passions and I'm not sure where they'll lead me. My question is, do you need to start with the vision of your end goal in order to create success? Did you always envision your business in its current form? And what advice do you have for those of us who don't see the whole plan laid out quite yet? Thanks, Jillian. Jillian, this is a fantastic question. Now, I want to be honest. The reason that we chose to answer this question is for two reasons. The one, because we love this question. I will answer it in a minute. But the second is because you give me a chance to talk about something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. You see, one of the pieces of criticism that we get about what I do here, Marie TV and my business, all that stuff is, sure, it's easy for you, Marie. You've got a stylist and a studio and this whole team. And I just sit back and I think, are you for reals? Do you think I just magically appeared here this way? I mean, I am a Jersey girl that came from New Jersey, Italian-American family, working class, and I've busted my buns my entire life. I have not been handed anything on a silver platter. I mean, my parents are incredible. They're amazing human beings. They totally supported me with my education, which I also helped pay for. But once I got out of college, I worked 7 days a week, multiple jobs, busting my ass just to make ends meet. Plus, like many people, after I got out of college, I was massively in debt because I was silly, but I got myself out of it. The point is that I didn't just come here and arrive with all this stuff. I've worked my ass off to make it happen. Now, I'm not saying this because I have a chip on my shoulder, but I am saying it because I want to make something clear. You do not have to start off with all of this or anything like this if you want to be successful. So now I will get off my soapbox and answer your question, did I have a clear vision for what this business would look like when I first started out? The answer is OMG, no. You have got to remember, I am the multi-passionate entrepreneur. I liked so many things that it was actually paralyzing. Plus, I had no ability to see out past 6 months. It was really torturesome because I liked so many things. I loved hip hop, I loved writing, I loved marketing, and I loved fitness. That's a lot of things to love. While Stephen Covey's advice, begin with the end in mind, is amazing and sometimes fantastic, other times it's just not possible. I had to work really, really hard at multiple passions until I eventually found convergence for myself. I mean, in 2001, when I first started, the only things I knew was that I was really driven to make a difference. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to help people, but I had no idea what it would wind up eventually looking like. So back then, I only had many immediate goals. So for example, in my hip hop classes, it was all about how do I fill up my classes and make really badass choreography. In my life coaching practice, it was how do I get people better results? And then with marketing and business, it was like, okay, how can I write more persuasive, more clear copy? I had no ability whatsoever to see a long-term vision in front of me. I only had to take the steps I knew I had to take and do the best that I could do at the time. This brings me to one of my favorite quotes of all time. And yes, you bet your bottom dollar is today's tweetable. Faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So let's land this plane, Jillian. While I'm a big believer in having a clear vision in where you're going, sometimes that is just not reality. So the game plan for you is to bring your A game to everything that you're doing and then have faith that when the time is right, your clear vision will emerge. I want to talk about the artist journey now, the unglamorous, uncinematic part, the grindy part, because I feel like once folks get a certain level of momentum and they've gotten some projects out there, they've shipped them, they have it under their belt, the artist journey feels like it's this, first of all, it's the most recent of the books. How do you define it, and why is it important for us to recognize this as a separate stage?
Really good questions, Marie.
I try. Maybe I should do this for a
You
living.
actually read some of these things. You really think about it. Yeah. But it really is, it just says sort of thinking about my own experience.
Yeah.
That I could sort of divide my life in half, you know? And the first half, what I would call the hero's journey part of it, and I think this applies to everybody, is where you're just coming from, you don't know who the hell you are, what you want to do, and you finally sort of reach the point where you say, okay, I am an artist, or whatever it is. I am a writer, I am an entrepreneur, I am a dancer, whatever it is. And at that point, the hero's journey is over. It's sort of, if we do the analogy to the Odyssey, Odysseus has come back to Ithaca and, you know, reclaimed his kingship, you know. And in the hero's journey, the hero in the myth, the Joseph Campbell version, the hero always comes back with a gift for the people, right? So if your hero's journey ends and you say, okay, I'm a writer, I'm a screenwriter, whatever it is. Now the second half of your life begins that I call the artist journey. Now the question is, okay, I'm going to be a writer. What the hell am I going to write? You know, and what is my gift? Who am I is really the question. What, you know, Philip Roth would have one answer, and Bruce Springsteen would have another answer, and Joni Mitchell would have another answer. They each have different gifts, and that's when, as you were saying, kind of the mundane part, the sort of the Roseanne Cash part, what we were just talking about, where you sort of say to yourself, okay, I got to build my day.
Yes.
I've got to build my month, build my year. I've got to be thinking in long term, you know, in the next 10 years, the rest of my life. And what albums what's the next album and that kind of thing. But really, it's answering the question, who am I? What is my gift? And that's quite different from the hero's journey of thrashing around out in the real world, having love affairs and getting divorced and being into drugs and all that other sort of stuff. That's over, I think, once you pass a certain point.
Yes.
But now it becomes almost as hard. It's like you're just coming into your studio, if you're a dancer, let's say, and it's like, or what am I going to choreograph? What do I do?
What's my voice?
Yeah, what's my voice? Who am I?
Yeah.
And that's really hard.
It is really hard. It is really hard. Sometimes people, it's funny, you know, I have a kind of love-hate relationship with social media. Even though I do this, like my team will tell you.
I have a hate relationship.
I love it. Like I can't stand taking selfies. Like they literally have to force me. I'm just not interested. I'm like, I don't want to look at myself. Why do y'all want to look at me? And sometimes be like, well, we want more behind the scenes shit. I'm like, you literally want to see me in like a dirty bun, haven't showered for like 2 days, sit on my couch in like the same pair of, I'm like, it's not glamorous. Like, this is a show. We do this because it's a show, and I love the show, and I love sharing information, all that stuff. But my point is, and when you're in the artist journey, when you're working on your voice, when you're developing a body of work, it's like, it's grindy, people.
Yeah,
it's not cute.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely not cute. But I just want to say this because, again, I want to demystify stuff for people, because there's so many mistaken notions that I think can keep people paralyzed, or keeping themselves as though they're not measuring up. They're not good enough. They have these comparison things that they do. So the reason that I'm saying this is because I believe, part of the artist journey is that tough work. And I want to go to this place next because it's one of my favorite parts of that book. Put your ass where your heart wants to be. Put your ass where your heart wants to be. I know you have a hate relationship with social, but I used that quote when I was talking about this book when it first came out. People were like, they lost their shit for good reason, because that's what it's about.
Well, it's a simple way of saying just show up,
Yes.
If you want to be a writer, sit in front of the keyboard, put your ass in that place.
Yes.
And just grind it out, and eventually the muse will come to you,
Yes.
I believe the muse kind of flies over us every day and kind of looks down to see if we're working, if we're doing our work. And if we are, sooner or later, the magic will happen,
Wasn't that amazing? Now, if you love these strategies, you are going to love my conversation with Morgan Harper Nichols, where we talk about how to make time and space for your creativity every single day. So click this video. It is a must watch right now.
I do have moments where I sit there and I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know what to say to this person. And that, to me, I'm like, well, that's the cue that it's time to read. It's time to listen.